Bill Maher is at again delivering another fiery critique, this time aimed squarely at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as he questions her rising influence and challenges what he sees as the excesses of modern progressive politics. He paints her as a symbol of the activist wing of her party and argues that her brand of rhetoric connects loudly online, but may struggle beyond that bubble once more he steps into the cultural crossfire, blending satire with sharp commentary and making it clear he has no plans to stay quiet about the direction he believes the political left is heading. The comedian held nothing back, dismissing the notion of AOC as a credible presidential hopeful in Maher's view. She is far too wrapped up in progressive ideology to steer the Democratic Party, and he even joked that party leaders might have better odds backing someone with the bold swagger and unapologetic confidence of Donald Trump. He was hardly the only voice raising doubts, as critics quickly joined the chorus arguing that an AOC-led ticket would spell disaster at the ballot box for whether people cheer him or roll their eyes. Bill Maher understands how to ignite a debate, and this time he is serving up a cautionary tale. He believes party insiders ignore at their own risk. So if you are new here, hit subscribe, settle in, and get ready as we unpack the swirling controversy surrounding AOC 2028. To set the stage, let us revisit an earlier clip that offers background and context it is not about. I know many of you have already seen this clip, and I have discussed it before, so I will not spend too much time revisiting it now. I'm bringing it up simply to set the stage for what comes next. Yes, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez continues to attract large, energized crowds, and she deserves acknowledgement for that momentum. But as Bill Maher has emphasized, rallies and applause are not the same as votes cast on Election Day enthusiasm. Inside a venue does not guarantee success in battleground states. Just look at Kamala Harris, who once enjoyed celebrity backing, glowing coverage, and strong support from Hollywood, yet ultimately delivered a campaign many viewed as underwhelming, which is why critics warn against confusing popularity with true electability. Maher and others argue that charisma alone will not secure crucial states like Pennsylvania, and they also point to controversies such as her claims that Donald Trump weaponized the Justice Department, saying even some voices on the left have challenged that narrative and called attention to what they see as a broader double standard in how power and accountability are discussed. Did you notice that brief pause, that flicker of hesitation in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's voice? It felt like the question landed in a way she did not anticipate. And honestly, it caught many viewers off guard, especially coming from NPR, which is often seen as a comfortable space for Democratic figures. Still, the question itself was fair. Critics argue that while Democrats accuse Donald Trump of weaponizing the Department of Justice, they rarely acknowledge their own record when it comes to aggressive investigations, particularly those involving Trump. What made the exchange compelling was watching AOC work through a response in real time. She is typically polished and quick on her feet, yet here you could sense a recalculation as she searched for footing. If a single pointed question can create that kind of visible reset, it raises the broader issue of how she might handle sustained scrutiny should interviews become less predictable and more adversarial. For many observers, the exchange carried a sense of political irony as the typically poised and media-fluent Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez appeared briefly unsettled while defending her party. Broader narrative critics argue that she leaned heavily on the point that Donald Trump was prosecuted through established legal channels and ultimately judged by a jury verdict, which they say should settle questions about legitimacy, yet those same critics question whether confidence in the justice system remains. Consistent when investigations or legal scrutiny move in a different political direction, they frame the debate around standards and reciprocity, asking whether institutional trust should be situational or steady regardless of party. Supporters of AOC respond that each legal matter is distinct, grounded in its own facts, evidence, and procedures, and that acknowledging one verdict does not obligate blanket approval of every investigation. The deeper issue revealed in the moment is less about a single soundbite and more about the fragile public trust in institutions, with both sides quick to accuse the other, selective outrage, weaponized narratives, and opportunistic defenses. In that sense, the controversy underscores a broader struggle in American politics over accountability, fairness, and whether principles are being applied evenly or filtered through partisan loyalty, leaving voters to interpret not only the legal arguments but also the perceived consistency of the leaders making. Once again, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez finds herself tangled in a tricky spot, and her response is classic sidestep and spin. Observers note that she appeared to bend the truth to navigate the question. Did you catch the subtle wordplay? She claimed she was offering guidance to her constituents about their rights, yet the interviewer's question was far more direct, asking specifically about illegal immigrants rather than confront that head-on. She swapped in constituents, a term usually associated with legal residents or citizens. This was a deliberate deflection intended to soften the implications of her answer. Critics argue that moments like this raise questions about whether AOC is truly as strategically savvy as media coverage often portrays them. They suggest this was not a deft example of political maneuvering, but rather a transparent dodge, and the irony is that the attempt to obscure the specifics was hardly missed, with many recalling a similar stumble when she faced Tom Homan roughly a year ago, reinforcing the pattern of evasive answers under pressure. Ouch, that one really lands hard. Observers struggle to follow what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was even attempting to argue. Her reasoning seems scattered at best. The reality is that the U.S. cannot always detain a parent and child together in immigration cases. If an illegal immigrant is apprehended with a child, some degree of separation is inevitable due to legal and logistical constraints, yet AOC continues to frame this as a purely emotional human rights issue, while largely ignoring that similar Separations happen routinely with U.S. citizens, for example. If a parent who is a citizen is arrested for something like a DUI and temporarily separated from their child, nobody raises alarms. But when the same scenario involves an undocumented immigrant, suddenly it is portrayed as a crisis. This is the double standard that critics say she repeatedly promotes, reinforcing the idea that she prioritizes the interests of illegal immigrants over law-abiding Americans. They argue her actions are less about consistent justice and more about scoring political points, weaponizing emotion while disregarding logic. Meanwhile, Tom Homan remains unfazed and doubles down on his stance, emphasizing enforcement consistency and the practical realities of immigration law, highlighting a stark contrast between political narrative and operational reality. Boom, just like that, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez seems to retreat like a cornered cat. Once Tom Homan turned up the heat at the hearing, she struggled under scrutiny, showing exactly what happens when performative outrage collides with plain facts. Homo Man did not raise his voice or resort to dramatics. He simply outlined the law and due process. In clear terms, there's a legal pathway for anyone genuinely seeking asylum. Sneaking across the border does not exempt anyone from legal obligations, yet AOC tried to reshape the discussion into a morality narrative that conveniently overlooks law, order, and fairness. Faced with practical realities of border enforcement, she had no solid rebuttal, offering only vague emotional appeals before quietly stepping back. This highlights the divide between grandstanding and governing. Homeman brought facts and procedure, while AOC brought feelings and rhetoric, and feelings rarely carry weight in real-world policy debates. The real question becomes how she responds when confronted with her own approach mirrored back under scrutiny. And that is exactly the sensation one experiences when finally confronted with the very medicine they have spent so long prescribing to others. It is uncomfortable, it is revealing, and it speaks volumes about consistency and credibility. Observers have long argued that so-called activists often function more as hypocrites in disguise, cloaked behind buzzwords and selective outrage, rather than principled actors, which is why it is wise to take their recommendations and public indignation with a heavy pinch of salt. In this particular instance, it helps explain why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez looked visibly flustered and hesitant during questioning. The focal point of discomfort was her outright refusal to describe what Hamas did to Israel last year as a genocide. This is not a minor semantic dispute. Critics emphasize if the roles have been reversed and the victims were aligned with her preferred political narrative, it is argued that she would have had no hesitation in labeling the actions a genocide, leading the charge with social media hashtags, impassioned statements, and tearful public interviews. Yet, when confronting facts that challenge the story she has invested in so heavily, she retreats into silence. The broader issue goes beyond a single word or label. It underscores a pattern where the appearance of moral outrage and empathy is carefully curated to fit political objectives rather than grounded in consistent principles. The double standard is glaring. The moral compass appears deeply misaligned, and the long-term consequence is a steadily eroding credibility among voters and observers who value consistency, accountability, and truth over performative gestures and selective indignation. Bill Maher was spot on an AOC Sanders ticket. Could easily spell political disaster for the Democratic Party. This goes beyond mere poor strategy. It reflects a troubling disconnect from political reality. Both Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders appear more invested in optics and performative displays than intangible results and pragmatic leadership. Sanders talks about dismantling the oligarchy while comfortably navigating a party filled with corporate elites, lobbyists, and political insiders. A contrast is striking, and the irony cannot be overstated. Meanwhile, AOC lacks the depth of experience and intellectual foundation needed to justify a serious role on a national ticket. Her appeal relies heavily on viral moments and social media buzz rather than substantive policy proposals. Elevating figures like AOC and Sanders may energize the far left, but it risks alienating moderate and swing voters who are crucial to winning elections if Democrats continue down a path dominated by ideological purity, emotional theatrics, and grandstanding. The consequence could be more than just losing elections. It could lead to self-inflicted political collapse. For those following along, make sure to ring the bell and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next installment.